The day of the $40 million business deal arrived. My boss, Emily, was standing frozen, unable to answer the client's questions. Then, our former manager Kevin stood up with a smirk on his face. "Everyone, I apologize. It seems she has completely forgotten about the mishandling of the previous contract." At that moment, everything clicked for me. Kevin had deliberately failed to brief Emily properly and had not told her anything about past incidents, setting her up for failure. I couldn't stand to see her struggle any longer. I stood up resolutely, walked up to the stage, and stood beside Emily. Then I pulled out a different set of documents and began explaining smoothly. Kevin would have to pay for the mess he created. "My name is John. I'm 42 years old and work in sales. I work for TechCraft, a company that manufactures and installs industrial equipment, but the tasks I'm assigned are always very simple. This is because my direct supervisor, Kevin, has deemed me incompetent and never gives me any substantial work. So, I spend my days organizing files and making copies, feeling like a perpetual newbie. Kevin often assigns me menial tasks and, on bad days, even sends me to the convenience store to get his coffee. It's completely personal and not work-related, but the other employees are too scared of Kevin's wrath to say anything. I wanted to do more fulfilling work, but I couldn't bring myself to speak up. I've always been timid, unable to stand up for myself since I was a kid. One of my classmates from elementary and middle school, Mike, used to bully me relentlessly. Mike called me kiddo and always laughed as he tormented me. I wasn't outgoing or athletic. During recess, instead of playing with the other boys, I would read books or write stories by myself. Mike would snatch my notebook and mockingly say, "Wow, you're writing stories about girls? You're seriously weird. Give it back. There's nothing wrong with it." I would reach out desperately, but Mike would just wave the notebook tauntingly. "Of course it's weird. While we're all playing soccer or dodgeball, you're here writing lousy stories. Stop it. Give it back." Mike bullied me endlessly. Though I wanted to avoid him, we ended up in the same class in our 9th year of middle school. I thought it was the worst. When it was decided we would do a play for the school festival, Mike maliciously suggested I should be the lead. "I think John should be Aladdin. He's always reading stories, so he'll be great." I hated being the center of attention, so I was shocked. I tried to decline, but everyone agreed, so I had to play Aladdin in Aladdin. The girl playing the princess cried because she wanted a cooler partner. I felt so embarrassed I wanted to cry too, but the play was a success, and our class got a lot of applause. I hated the attention so much I wanted to disappear from the stage. Afterwards, everyone went to karaoke for a celebration, but I went home and curled up in my bed. Because of this, I still can't stand up to others and get nervous when criticized. Even when my boss demands unreasonable things, I comply without a word, thinking my life will always be this dull. One day, a woman from a regional office transferred to our headquarters. Her name was Emily, and she was assigned to my department. She had a tall, straight posture and striking and well-defined features. She was set to replace Kevin as my boss, and I worried she might be as tough as he was. But Emily was kind to me. "John, could you handle creating this report?" "What? Are you sure I can do it?" I was shocked and blurted out, as I'd never been given such significant work under Kevin's supervision. Then Emily tilted her head slightly and said, "Yes." Everyone else said they were too busy to help. Please don't take it the wrong way, it's not that you seemed free. "No, I'll do it. If you're okay with me, I'd love to take it on." I was genuinely thrilled that Emily entrusted me with this task. Having only done mundane chores until now, I poured all my energy into creating the report. The result was a clear and well-organized document that looked great. "Emily, I've completed the report. Does this look okay?" "Thank you." "Wow, it looks very good. It's neatly organized and easy to understand." "John, you're really good at this." Emily beamed at me as I nervously handed over the report. "Yes, I enjoy doing this kind of work. I'll ask you again." Being praised for my work made me happy all day. From that moment, I started to take a liking to Emily. Emily graduated from a prestigious college and even studied abroad in the UK, which gave her an intellectual aura. She was also attractive and single, so many male colleagues were interested in her. They probably wanted a smart and beautiful wife like Emily. During breaks, the men took turns inviting her to lunch. But she always politely declined everyone's invitations with a smile. Instead, she continued working at her desk, eating convenience store sandwiches. Since I also ate convenience store food at my desk, I felt a sense of camaraderie with her. Although Emily was kind to the other female employees, they didn't seem to like her. They complained that she was condescending because of her elite background. I had never felt that way, so it seemed like jealousy to me. Emily had good looks, a great figure, and an impressive education. Perhaps her credentials made others feel an insurmountable barrier. Yet, the other women, who were married with children, would gossip that Emily couldn't understand them. I felt sorry for Emily. Regardless of marital status, everyone has their own circumstances, so people should mind their own business. The female employees would say that one isn't complete until they're married with kids, but that's just meddling. If I were a woman, I couldn't bear such remarks from my peers. However, Emily never got angry or sad, always smiling and brushing it off. One day, Emily approached me. "Could you accompany me to the client meeting next week?" "What? Me?" I was puzzled that Emily asked me directly when there were other employees available. "Yes. I thought it would be a great learning opportunity for you. Since you helped organizing the documents for this deal that Kevin was working on, I'd like you to come." While I had indeed organized the documents for Kevin's projects, it was merely a filing task he ordered me to do. But Emily seemed to believe that Kevin entrusted me with those documents because he trusted me. If that's the case, I'd be happy to join. Could I have the documents Kevin handed over? Upon my request, Emily's expression darkened. "That's the problem. Kevin said he already handed them over, but I haven't received anything. He claims he doesn't have them anymore." "What? So you haven't seen the documents at all?" To my astonishment, Kevin hadn't handed over any documents for this project. Despite Emily's repeated requests, Kevin insisted he had already done the handover. In reality, Emily hadn't received a single file or contract related to this deal. This is unbelievable. I've checked multiple times thinking I might have lost them, but there's no record of any handover. I'm at a loss. That's why I thought having you, who worked closely with Kevin, would be helpful. Emily furrowed her perfectly shaped eyebrows, looking genuinely troubled. Seeing her distressed, I sighed internally. This was probably another one of Kevin's malicious tricks. Kevin, who still wanted to stay on as the sales manager, must have felt bitter about losing his position to Emily. In the days leading up to his transfer, he took out his frustration on our team, myself included. It was inappropriate for a professional, but Kevin likely left the handover incomplete on purpose. The reason I'm accompanying this transaction is that it has some issues. It must be a plan to throw Emily, who knows nothing about the situation, into the mix. I was furious with Kevin for continuing to torment our department even after his departure. I understand. I'll go. Though I'm just a lowly employee, I'm not sure how much help I'll be. Please don't say that about yourself. Regardless of your position, you work hard, and that effort will be rewarded. Emily's sincere expression warmed my heart. Okay. I'll do my best. Please take me along. Thank you. I'm counting on you. Emily's bright smile made me nod with determination. Since being asked to accompany her, I spent my time thoroughly reviewing the related documents in the archives. Having been assigned to organize files by Kevin, I knew exactly where everything was. I compiled the most important documents and handed them to Emily. Though it took until late last night, we were finally ready for the meeting. On the day of the meeting, Emily bowed to me. "This wouldn't have been possible without you, John. Thank you so much." "No, not at all. This is the result of your hard work, Emily. Let's give a great presentation." We steeled ourselves and headed to the conference room where our clients were waiting. TechCraft, the company I work for, manufactures and installs industrial equipment, and we were trying to secure an order for machine parts. With $40 million at stake, this deal had to succeed. Several executives from our company were present. Unexpectedly, Kevin was also in the meeting. Despite my inner confusion, the meeting began. Emily started her presentation smoothly with the materials we had prepared together. However, just 10 minutes in, the meeting was halted. The client's employees began whispering among themselves, and one of them, Mark, raised his hand. Before we proceed with this deal, could you explain the issues from the previous transaction? What? The previous transaction? Emily looked confused and glanced at me. I was also unaware of any issues with the previous deal and tried to seek answers from other employees. Then I noticed Kevin smirking maliciously. What's the matter? Hurry and answer their questions. Kevin's prompting made me realize we were being set up. All eyes were now on Emily. We requested an earlier delivery, but it ended up being delayed by about 6 months. Additionally, the delivered product did not meet the promised specifications. How will you address this? According to the other party's explanation, the previous transaction was a project that was ordered by Kevin. They were supposed to manufacture and install the equipment requested by the client. However, by the deadline, the installed equipment was nothing like what was agreed upon in the contract. The production speed and precision of the delivered equipment were significantly downgraded compared to what was ordered, resulting in a storm of complaints from the site. But Kevin took no action in response to these complaints and transferred to a different position, leaving everything to his successor, the new manager. Despite this, Kevin did not hand over any related documents to Emily. As a result, we entered this $40 million deal without addressing the problems from the previous transaction. Well. Emily frantically flipped through her notes, but she wasn't prepared for this. Her pale skin turned even whiter as panic set in. Satisfied with the chaos he caused, Kevin began speaking. Everyone, I apologize. It seems she has completely forgotten about the mishandling of the previous contract. The executives began murmuring, and some directing stern looks at Emily. Emily, overwhelmed by the unexpected questioning and the critical eyes of the executives, was on the verge of panic. Kevin sat back with his arms crossed, looking satisfied with Emily's situation. It was at that moment I finally understood everything. Kevin had deliberately withheld the handover and failed to inform Emily about past cases, hoping she would fail. He must have orchestrated this to ruin Emily's future and to reclaim his position as the sales manager. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Emily is a dedicated worker and a great boss who cares about her subordinates. I couldn't bear to see her struggle any longer. I stood up resolutely, walked to the stage, and stood beside her. Then, I took out a different set of documents and began explaining smoothly. Thank you for your continued business. Regarding the equipment, we have made all possible repairs to ensure it operates without impacting your company's operations. But the delivery date. We can't trust a company that can't meet deadlines. The client shouted angrily. I calmly continued. The original contract had an unrealistic deadline. We requested your cooperation to meet that deadline, but unfortunately, it wasn't provided, causing the delay. It was Kevin who had signed the contract with the unrealistic deadline. When I glanced at him, Kevin was sweating and nervously shaking his leg, glaring at me. Ignoring his displeased look, I held up the new documents. Here is the original contract. Why do you have that? I could hear Kevin's groan. I had found the previous contract while preparing for this presentation. I hadn't told Emily since it was a lot of material, but bringing it turned out to be the right move. Indeed, our company didn't fulfill the conditions stated here. But the fact remains, the delay caused us significant losses. As I mentioned, we made all possible repairs after delivery. As you are currently using the equipment without issues, there shouldn't be any operational disruptions. The other party started murmuring again in response to my claims. One of them made a call to the site and confirmed that my statements were accurate. But, due to the delay, we demand compensation for the loss incurred. The performance didn't meet our specified standards, and we request an apology and compensation. The specified standards were reference values, as clearly stated in the document. Also, as I mentioned, the delay was due to the lack of cooperation from your side, and we've ensured there are no operational disruptions. Presenting the contract confidently, I responded. Again, the other party scrambled to confirm with their company. However, the delay did occur, and we apologize sincerely. We will avoid setting unrealistic deadlines in the future. I glanced at Kevin, who was now pale and glaring at me with narrowed eyes. The contract clearly showed Kevin was responsible for the previous deal. Hence, the executives were now suspiciously looking at him. Despite the unexpected issues, we immediately addressed them. We will always strive to prevent any harm to our clients. As demonstrated by our prompt repairs last time. I concluded the presentation with a deep bow. When I looked up, I saw a look of trust from the clients. After confirming with our headquarters, everything you said is correct. We had missteps too, disrupting our coordination with your company. But we appreciate your prompt response. The presentation then proceeded smoothly, with Emily presenting the crucial part. In the end, we successfully closed the $40 million deal. Afterwards, Emily looked relieved. Thank you so much for today. The deal was finalized thanks to you, John. But how did you manage it so well? Who are you really? Well, as I was about to answer, Kevin stormed over, fuming. What was that about today? And why is this useless John here meddling in the deal? You should be more concerned about your own position. When I calmly responded and pointed behind him, Kevin's face twisted in shock as he turned around, exclaiming, "What?" There stood the executives, glaring at Kevin, especially Executive Vice President Tim, who looked furious. What is this about the previous contract? An obviously unrealistic deadline and questionable terms? Well, it was just a small mistake. Kevin immediately hunched his shoulders, struggling to come up with excuses. His arrogant attitude towards me was now completely gone. Mistake or not, we almost lost a $40 million deal. Do you realize how much damage that would have caused our company? You should be thanking John for saving the day. Forced to show gratitude to someone he had always belittled, Kevin reluctantly bowed his head, bitterness evident in his expression. But the upper management didn't stop there. We have already had concerns about your work attitude. We will conduct an internal investigation and decide on your disciplinary action accordingly. Prepare to face the consequences. Wait, please. I did nothing wrong. Chasing after the executives as they walked away, Kevin was half in tears, desperately trying to defend himself. However, once his actions were fully exposed, it was likely that he would face severe repercussions. After the commotion died down, Emily turned to me again. John, you're really impressive. You always said you were just an incompetent employee, but I can't see that at all. Oh, come on, you're exaggerating. I'm just an ordinary employee who handles paperwork. No matter how much I denied it, Emily kept looking at me with a serious expression. Why did you bring the previous contract? Without it, today's negotiation might have failed. In business, it's crucial to back up claims with contracts. Contracts serve as proof, detailing specific and clear terms with mutual agreement. As I explained smoothly, Emily's eyes widened even more. Be honest with me. Are you actually an elite? You're quick-witted, logical, and persuasive. Do you have any qualifications? Well, seeing her earnest gaze, I realized it was pointless to hide the truth any longer, so I finally revealed my true background. Actually, I have a law degree. What? So you were a lawyer? That explains why you're so knowledgeable about contracts. Did you also go to law school? Emily's eyes grew round with surprise at my response. No. I passed the bar exam but chose not to become a lawyer. What? Why did you say you were just an ordinary employee? You're really talented. Thank you so much for saving the day. I was panicking. Emily repeatedly expressed her gratitude. I had kept my law degree a secret at the company. Although I mentioned it in my resume when I joined. Only HR and top management knew about my background and qualifications since the company is large. Kevin and my colleagues probably saw me as just another useless employee. I was always more of a bookworm and got teased a lot by my classmates. I even wrote novels but was ridiculed for it. John, you have so many talents. That's amazing, truly amazing. Emily kept praising me, but I didn't see myself as exceptional. I obtained my law degree to help people, but then something unfortunate happened. My mentor was targeted and seriously harmed by someone involved in a case, and I witnessed the incident. He eventually passed away, making me question the profession. I aim to help people as a lawyer, but the idea of being hated to the point of being attacked made me reconsider. So, I decided not to pursue a legal career and instead chose to live as an ordinary employee. I've never liked being in the spotlight, so a simple office worker's life suited me more than I expected. During interviews, I was often asked why I wanted to be an office worker despite having a law degree. But I just wanted a peaceful life as a typical employee. I gave generic answers and got hired, leading to where I am now. Initially, I worked hard, but as I aged, I was told not to overdo it or that my efforts inconvenienced others, so I stopped trying so hard. Most new hires had only attended four-year colleges, so my background in law made me an outlier. I was probably treated as a useless employee because of my age. As a result, Kevin gave me menial tasks, treating me as incompetent, but I didn't care anymore. Although I longed for fulfilling work, I disliked standing out during crises. I had always worked as an employee with the sole intention of avoiding responsibility, but this time was different. I couldn't ignore Emily's struggles and wanted to help her. Emily had always looked out for me since she arrived, so I wanted to support her in return. After sharing my past with her, she listened with teary eyes until the end. Seeing her cry for me made me feel somewhat pleased. "John, you're a sensitive and kind person. I think you're too gentle to handle harsh realities, which is why you couldn't become a lawyer." Hearing such kind words, I couldn't help but blink in surprise. But that's not something to be ashamed of. It just shows how pure your heart is, Emily said, patting me on the back. After that, the negotiation proceeded smoothly. During the meeting with the client, they reviewed the details, and we drafted revisions on the spot. Given my law degree, we even completed the contract draft by the end of the meeting. The client trusted me completely for my swift and accurate handling of the transaction. Under Emily's leadership, our sales department continued to improve its performance. Later, the executives announced Kevin's demotion. At the same time, a transfer order was issued, and Kevin was moved to the archiving department. As the name suggests, it's a well-known dead-end department in the company, effectively equivalent to a dismissal notice. Initially, Kevin tried to regain his former standing, aiming for a comeback. However, word of his near failure of the $40 million deal had spread, causing everyone to distance themselves from him. With no work and no social interaction, Kevin's spirit broke within just 2 months. He submitted his resignation and left the company voluntarily. Kevin eventually found a job at a subcontractor of our company, but even there, he caused problems. Unable to let go of his past glory, he repeatedly made disrespectful remarks to his new superiors. Ultimately, he couldn't fit in and resigned again, leading to a series of failed job hunts. Kevin's reputation had spread in the industry, and he could no longer find permanent employment. Now, he earns his living through day labor, working on road construction and other manual jobs. A colleague mentioned seeing him looking ragged and working hard, a stark contrast to his once arrogant demeanor. As for me, I still work with Emily. The only difference now is that Emily's last name has changed to mine. After everything, I mustered up the courage to confess my feelings to her. When I told her that I had liked her since we first met, she looked slightly surprised, then smiled gently and nodded. "I've always liked you too, John. I stayed at my desk for lunch just to be near you." "Really?" It turned out we had mutual feelings for each other. We got married. At work, we use our previous last names for professional reasons, but at home, we enjoy our joyful newlywed life. Meeting Emily was the greatest fortune of my life. Without her, I would have continued as a quiet, ordinary employee. I believe that together, we can face any challenges life throws our way, supporting and encouraging each other. With that thought, I held her hand. She firmly squeezed back, reassuring me of our shared strength. She stuck her tongue out playfully. Her every gesture is so cute, it drives me crazy. "But today, I want to thank you. Can I do something for you?" When she says things like that, it makes me a bit hopeful. My heart pounding, I racked my brain. "My name is Matt. I'm a 31-year-old lawyer working at the Thompson law firm. I'm a rookie lawyer with only 8 months of experience. You found some really good materials. The one flashing that adorable smile is Nicole, a paralegal aiming to become a lawyer. She's the beloved daughter of the firm's director, James. I decided to become a lawyer and entered the law faculty at college. But I kept failing the preliminary exams required to take the bar exam until my senior year. The preliminary exam has no qualifications or age restrictions. Despite repeated attempts during college, I failed each time. I begged my father to let me try for another year, but he refused. So I joined a small real estate company as a working adult. Dreams don't run away. With this motto in my heart, I continued studying while working, but reality wasn't so kind. If I couldn't pass while dedicating myself to studying in college, how could I pass while working? Determined, I quit the real estate company after 5 years and searched for a law firm that would hire me while I studied for the bar exam. At 27, I was hired as a paralegal at Thompson Law Firm. With the help of senior lawyers, I continued studying for 2 more years. At 29, I finally passed the preliminary exam. Passing this exam granted me the qualification to take the bar exam. Although this qualification lasts 5 years, I passed the bar exam on the first try. At 30, I finally became a lawyer, but not quite. I completed a year of legal apprenticeship and finally started working as a lawyer at Thompson Law Firm at 31. Currently, as a first-year lawyer, I primarily work under the guidance of my seniors while seeking cases I can handle on my own. I want to work as a lawyer soon too. I must pass the preliminary exam this year. I can't let my father down. Nicole, determined to pass, has failed the preliminary exam twice since graduating from the law faculty. Graduating from law school also qualifies one to take the bar exam. But Nicole doesn't want to burden her parents any further and aims to pass the preliminary exam on her own. The preliminary exam consists of multiple choice, essay, and oral exams, each leading to the next if passed. Passing the oral exam at the end means success. But Nicole has twice failed at the oral exam stage. This year, she has again studied hard, passed the essay exam, and is now preparing for the oral exam. Just over a month until the exam. I'm already so nervous, she said, reflecting her extreme anxiety. Her face darkened, already showing nerves. However, passing the essay exam means the chances of passing the oral exam are high. She failed before due to nerves, but she should succeed this time. You'll be fine, Nicole. You can do it. I cheered her on with a fist pump. Nicole forced a smile and mimicked my fist pump, saying, "Yes. I'll do my best." The next day at work, I saw 1 month leave written in Nicole's schedule. She would likely spend the next month intensely studying for the oral exam. One of the significant benefits of working at a law firm is the consideration given for exams. I don't know much about other firms, but James prioritized study schedules for me when I was a paralegal too. He didn't give me a whole month off, but this is his beloved daughter's studies. He must really want her to pass. As I pondered this while checking my own schedule, I saw 1 month leave under my name too. Confused, I stared at the whiteboard until James called me over. Help Nicole with her studies. As soon as I entered, James fixed his gaze on me and said, "What?" I responded stupidly. "We can't afford for her to fail the preliminary exam again this year. To ensure she can focus on studying, I've rented an apartment. I want you to stay there for a month and thoroughly prepare her for the exam. Nicole should already be there." Without asking my agreement, James simply looked at me and spoke calmly. I hurriedly protested. "What are you talking about? A man and a woman in the same room? Did Nicole agree to this?" Although I'm a new lawyer and he's the director, I've known James for 4 years since I was hired as a paralegal. James is a perfect lawyer but a friendly and good-natured guy in private. He has always tolerated my light-hearted remarks with a broad heart. She has no right to refuse, considering she hasn't even passed the preliminary exam yet. Hearing that, I recalled Nicole's already nervous face. Besides, there's no chance of anything happening with you. Nicole prefers handsome guys. I couldn't argue with that. I'm far from handsome, with my plain looks and bulbous nose. Then, how about Emily? We have two other lawyers at our firm. Emily, a 40-year-old woman, and Kevin, a 35-year-old handsome bachelor. Emily took the oral exam over 10 years ago. Her information is too outdated. Your knowledge is the most current. He dismissed the idea outright, but I had to ask. Kevin. Before I could finish, James interrupted. Absolutely not. He may be good at his job, but his behavior with women is terrible. That was the answer I expected, so I fell silent. I made one last argument. What about you, James? You're her father. You could certainly help her prepare for the oral exam, just like you did for me. James let out a long sigh. I don't understand. He muttered a single sentence. What? I was puzzled, and James leaned back in his chair. I'm a genius, remember? So I don't understand what it feels like to fail. I don't know how to teach those who do. Even when I taught you, I felt no progress. If he weren't my boss, I'd punch him for that. Well, half joking, but it's difficult for a father to tutor his daughter. Especially when their types are so different. I could understand that. A naturally gifted genius and someone like me who relies on hard work see things differently. James drilled me thoroughly for both the preliminary and bar exams, but his teaching methods didn't work for me. As I was lost in these thoughts, James spoke again. Currently, there's no simple case suitable for you. I've been looking after you for 4 years. So, out of gratitude, your mission this month is to help Nicole pass her oral exam. Now go. Faced with this irrefutable order, I had no choice but to agree. I quickly packed my things and headed to the apartment James mentioned. I rang the doorbell. Nicole, looking exhausted, answered the door. I'm sorry. My father. I hurriedly said, It's okay. I'm sorry, it's me. Can I come in? With that, I stepped into the apartment. The room was bare, with nothing but essentials. No TV, of course. It seemed perfect for studying. But there were still daily chores to do. Cleaning, laundry, and cooking. I'd love to let Nicole focus solely on her studies, but I can't cook at all. I always rely on convenience stores, dining out, or supermarket meals. Can I do the cooking? I enjoy it. Preparing 3 meals a day will be a nice change of pace, she said. Feeling incredibly guilty but also delighted, I eagerly accepted her offer. Since I'm dealing with a young woman, we decided to do our laundry separately. I took on other chores like cleaning and taking out the trash. Nicole cooked dinner right away. It's just the first day, so I made something simple, she said, presenting a delicious omelette. Anyone can make it taste good, she said shyly, but the perfectly wrapped fluffy egg told me otherwise. Not just anyone could make it this well. Every day, I get to enjoy such delicious meals. This unexpected perk made my heart leap with joy. However, studying was a different story. Despite Nicole's solid knowledge, she hesitated when answering questions. Since the oral exam involves a dialogue with examiners, I played the examiner using past questions to practice. When I posed a question, Nicole often fell silent. As the mock examiner, I wasn't sure how long to wait, so I just waited for her to answer. Suddenly, she stood up and rushed out. It seemed like she was crying. Perhaps she felt I was pressuring her with my silence. Panicked, I chased after her. In the chilly evening, I found her sitting on a park bench. I hurried over and apologized profusely. I'm sorry. I must have pressured you with my silence, I said. She shook her head vigorously. No, it's not that. It's just. When a man corners me, I remember my father. Your father, you mean James? She nodded yes slightly. It's always been like that. Whenever I brought home bad test scores, he'd barrage me with questions like, how did this happen, and what will you do next? He'd stay silent until I answered. My father is a genius. So he never understood my feelings. When I couldn't answer, he'd turn away, looking disappointed, as if I was a stranger. That expression scared me. It felt like he abandoned me, maybe he always has. Nicole spoke with a bitter smile. The James she described didn't match the James the first knew. He hasn't abandoned you. He asked me to. Before I could finish, she interrupted with a small shout. He dumped me on you. Tears started streaming down her face. My dad always looks at me like I'm a disappointment, always sighing. I know I failed the tests, but I worked hard to prepare for this year. As she sobbed into her hands, I spoke firmly. Dreams don't run away. Nicole looked at me in surprise. I failed the preliminary exam during my senior year of college. I flunked the essay section. I begged my father to let me try again for another year, but he refused. I wandered aimlessly until I saw a girl in a school uniform crying on a park bench. Repeating dreams don't run away. Seeing that young girl clinging to her dream, I told myself I'd never give up. If I kept chasing my dream, it would eventually come true. I finally passed the bar exam at 29. That moment was nostalgic. Since seeing that girl, dreams don't run away had become my motto. Nicole was momentarily stunned. Her tears had stopped. Then she whispered, "That might have been me." I was shocked. Those words, they were my grandmother's favorite saying. Ever since I was little, I've always wanted to be a lawyer like my dad. But I wasn't smart. And I often cried while studying with my grandmother. She would always tell me, "Dreams don't run away," and she taught me to catch up with my dreams at my own pace. Nicole shivered in the cold as she spoke. That day. It was December, right? My mock exam results were bad, and my father told me to change my target school. I felt so frustrated. Like he was saying I'd never be a lawyer. I felt abandoned. But I kept telling myself I'd never give up. Repeating my grandmother's words to keep going. She smiled at me. My grandmother's words reached you too. It's nice to think that those words helped you become a lawyer. As a rookie lawyer, I felt the need to downplay being called impressive. You'll become a lawyer too. Hold on to those words. You're only 24, right? I'm already 31. When I laughed, Nicole also laughed. What if I can't become a lawyer until I'm 31? That's pretty insulting. When I made a lighthearted comment, Nicole's expression brightened. But I won't give up. Even if it takes until I'm 35 or 40. I'll keep trying. Dreams don't run away, right? Nicole's smile was incredibly bright. As I continued to study with her, playing the role of examiner, we faced each day together. After about a week, I began to notice changes in her. The phrase I kept repeating, "Don't strive for perfection," started to sink in. She was likely trying to live up to her perfect father. But the oral exam doesn't require perfection. All she needs to do is answer the examiner's questions. Even if she goes slightly off track, the examiners will help steer her back, guiding her toward the correct answer. While I struggled for years to pass the essay section, I passed the oral exam on the first try the year I finally reached it. I gave some odd answers, yet I still passed. There may be some luck involved with the examiners, but since Nicole consistently passes the essay section, she shouldn't worry too much. As Nicole's answers improved, she gained more confidence. This might be the first time I've ever felt this confident. Seeing Nicole so excited, I gear up. We're just getting started. When I said that, Nicole stuck out her tongue playfully. Her every gesture is so cute, it drives me crazy. But today, I want to thank you. Can I do something for you? When she says things like that, it makes me a bit hopeful. My heart pounding, I racked my brain. 2 weeks left until the oral exam. Taking a break now and then is important, but since I'm here in a professional capacity, suggesting a date might freak her out. And James might fire me. Nicole looked at me sweetly as I shivered at the thought. I smiled and said, "I might like to have a fancier meal than usual." "Sure. What do you like? Burger? Beef stew?" As I hesitated, an idea flashed in my mind. "How about meatloaf?" Nicole looked surprised. "Really? That's a pretty old-fashioned request. Is it fancy enough? But okay. I'm good at it. You'll be amazed at how delicious it is." She bustled off to go shopping. Meanwhile, I made a phone call. 30 minutes later, Nicole returned and started cooking. The small room filled with a wonderful aroma. After it simmers a bit, I'll let it sit to absorb the flavors. Could you help me with a criminal law oral practice in the meantime? Hearing that, I nodded yes. Just then, the doorbell rang. I slipped past a surprised Nicole and went to the door. I returned to the living room. James was behind me. Dad. Why? Nicole looked a bit pale. James also looked slightly awkward. I thought it'd be good to show him some of your progress. James, could you help with the criminal law oral practice? James nodded silently in agreement. Nicole glared at me reproachfully. It'll be all right. Just show him what you can do, Nicole. In the tense atmosphere, we began a role-playing session to simulate the oral exam. James started speaking calmly. X broke into Y's residence. Starting with a simple introduction, the questioning continued. Initially, Nicole was scared, but she gradually began answering confidently. I clenched my hands in support, silently cheering her on. After 15 minutes, the mock exam ended. Both Nicole and I waited with bated breath for James's evaluation. James thought for a moment, then took a breath and said, "There were some off-target parts, but when I guided you, you found the correct answer." Nicole nodded yes. I could sense her tension. Even the unclear parts were answered accurately. "I think you'll be fine." Hearing this, both Nicole and I beamed. Seeing our faces, James stood up from his chair. "Well, I'll be going now. Keep working hard for the rest of the time." As James was about to leave, I stopped him. "Stay for dinner. Won't you join us?" Both Nicole and James froze at my suggestion. James seemed a bit hesitant, then turned away, saying, "No, that's okay." Nicole couldn't hold back anymore and said, "You don't want to eat my cooking, do you?" Both James and I looked at her in surprise. Nicole looked down. Just when I thought I might be recognized. I'm pushed away again. Her voice trembled. It seemed like she was crying. Her sobbing was the only sound in the room. Unable to bear the heavy atmosphere, I took a chance and asked bluntly, "James, do you dislike Nicole?" James looked at me, startled. "What? Why?" "No, why would you think that?" Feeling that I was on the right track, I pushed further. "Because she said you abandoned her due to her bad grades. You dumped her on me this time too. You didn't help her yourself." Nicole's eyes welled up with tears. Seeing this, James looked even more flustered. "Abandoned her?" "No, I didn't do that." "Why would you think that?" Seeing he was struggling to continue, I helped him out. "Exactly." With that, James looked at me. "If you had abandoned her, you wouldn't have arranged this apartment and asked me to spend a whole month helping her study, right?" Speaking gently, James sighed. "I thought you could teach her better than I could." "I'm not good at teaching people." James scratched his head. I asked another question. "Do you stay silent because you don't know how to encourage her?" Nicole looked at us with wide eyes. "Well, yes. Especially with my daughter. If I say something wrong, she'll hate me, right?" James mumbled. I felt like teasing him a bit. "Too late, she already hates you." When I said that, both James and Nicole panicked. "No. I don't hate you. Matt, stop being mean." Nicole cried, tears streaming down her face as she shouted. James looked at Nicole intently. Nicole, seeming to gather her resolve, faced James. "I've always had bad grades. Even though I wanted to be a lawyer like you. I couldn't even follow my desired path in high school. You told me to change my target school. I felt like I disappointed you. It hurt. But still." At this point, James hurriedly interrupted. "No, that's not it. I told you to change your target school because I didn't want you to push yourself too hard." James's words struck Nicole, and her tear-streaked eyes met his. "I saw you struggling, and I just wanted to suggest a slightly easier path. I've never been disappointed in you. You've always been my pride and joy." James said this shyly, and Nicole looked even more surprised. "But I can't do anything like you, and I'm not smart." James nodded slightly and continued. You've always worked twice as hard because you couldn't do things easily. Ever since elementary school, you've been trying so hard. That's something not everyone can do. Even now, you're giving it your all without giving up. You're my pride and joy. Nicole pressed her hands to her eyes. Tears welled up in my own eyes too. Then my stomach growled. Well, that ruined the moment. James said, laughing. I quickly apologized. Nicole stopped crying, and we decided to have dinner. James no longer seemed eager to leave. Seeing the meatloaf on the table, James's face lit up. I love it. I know. You always order it whenever it's on the menu, I said. Nicole, who was serving chicken noodle soup, turned to us with a surprised look. So, it wasn't for your taste, Matt? I thought I was winning you over. She said, placing the chicken noodle soup in front of me. Matt, you planned this from the start, didn't you? You were going to bring Dad here today, she accused. I nodded yes. I sensed some misunderstandings between you two, and I didn't want you to face the exam with that weighing on you. I said my thanks and took a sip of the chicken noodle soup. James took a bite of the meatloaf and exclaimed, It's delicious. Nicole looked a bit shy but pleased. There weren't any problems these past 2 weeks, right? Not that I doubted you, Matt, James said. I agreed with him, but Nicole pouted. What do you mean by no problems? She asked, resting her chin on her hand. Well, you used to like that boys group, right? Matt looks nothing like him. James, as usual, was incredibly blunt about me. Dad, you still don't get me. Nicole sighed as she said that. She then turned to the bewildered James and said decisively, I liked that boys group because he was so kind during a prank show on TV. My type is Matt. James froze, and I almost jumped out of my seat. Nicole beamed at me. So these past 2 weeks have been wonderful. Right, Matt? Nicole looked up at me. How about we continue living together even after the exam? My mind went blank, and I couldn't think of anything. As I opened and closed my mouth like a fish, unable to say anything, James panicked. Wait. Don't rush into this, Nicole. In response, Nicole nonchalantly said, I'm serious. Regret your own choice of making Matt my tutor. She stood tall, a stark contrast to the frightened girl she had been. James looked dejected. I just started to understand you, Nicole. He seemed at a loss for words, wanting to express his hopes for a renewed relationship. I chuckled. Don't worry, in 2 weeks, I'll move out of this apartment. James looked relieved, while Nicole's face fell. I turned to Nicole. This meatloaf is delicious. You've got me hooked. Even though our living arrangement will end in 2 weeks, can I ask you to be my girlfriend? If you'll have me. Nicole's face lit up. I understand how much you respect James and how things haven't gone as planned. Cherish your family time. And don't worry. I won't run away. I quoted Dreams Don't Run Away to make my point. It was a bit embarrassing, but Nicole nodded yes with teary eyes. Years later, the doors of the wedding hall opened, and James walked down the aisle with Nicole on his arm. Slowly, embracing each moment. They reached me. I whispered to James, Have your family bonds deepened? James smiled gently. Thank you. It was precious time. Tears glistened in James's eyes. Even though we'll still be colleagues, why are you crying? Give me more challenging cases too. Tears also welled up in Nicole's eyes. Nicole had been a lawyer for 2 years. She approached each case with great care. Crying, James took Nicole's arm and handed it to me, saying, Take good care of her. Yes. Firmly entrusted with Nicole, I turned to the priest. Asked if I vowed to love Nicole always, I said, I do, with all of my heart. Hearing Nicole's vow, I lifted her veil. Nicole's radiant and intelligent smile was the brightest and most cheerful I had ever seen. A crucial business deal was finalized. I felt relieved and was chatting with the representative, John. From now on, our companies would have a long-term relationship. I truly believed that. But suddenly, the client's manager, Mike, appeared and said something shocking. "What? You're a middle school graduate? We can't deal with such an incompetent person. The contract is off." John started to panic. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what was being said. Then Mike continued to degrade me with more harsh words. "A middle school graduate must be an idiot. We can't contract with a company that employs such people. A middle school graduate is incompetent." At that moment, I grasped the situation I was in. Given how far things had gone, there was no turning back. I uttered some words and was about to leave. Then, Mike, his face turning pale, ended up begging me for forgiveness. "My name is James, and I'm 36 years old. I grew up with my father, Tom, who ran a small factory. My mother passed away from an illness when I was little, so my father raised me alone. Since he had only one employee, he didn't have time to spend with me, and I was often left alone at home. When I became a grade schooler, I started waiting for his return at his company because I felt lonely at home. He didn't say anything about it, so I often watched his work. I spent my days like this, but as I became a middle schooler, I felt increasingly isolated. I was teased at school for being from a single-parent family and had no friends to speak of. Moreover, my relationship with my father worsened, and I stopped going to his factory entirely. I had no place at school or home. My grades were poor, and my confidence plummeted. No matter what I did, I felt like I couldn't succeed, and a sense of emptiness engulfed me. Gradually, I started skipping school and spent more time at home doing nothing. My father didn't say anything about it. One day, he suddenly asked me, "Would you like to go fishing today?" It was the first time since my childhood that he had invited me to go somewhere. I was surprised, and I responded coldly, "Don't you have work?" But my father just smiled. I took the day off. "It's okay to do that sometimes." I didn't reply, just nodded yes. I wasn't very enthusiastic, but I got into my father's car, and we headed to the sea. The sea on a weekday was quiet, with only the sound of the waves. It was a very magical place. He and I started fishing right away. He baited the hook and handed me the fishing rod. "Come on, give it a try. If you catch something big, we'll have a feast tonight." Following his lead, I took the fishing rod. Having been a shut-in for so long, the fishing rod felt unusually heavy. When I couldn't catch any fish, for a while, he suddenly started swinging his rod vigorously. I couldn't understand what was he doing. He explained to me, "This is how you lure the fish." "I see." I tried to imitate him. And then, something tugged on my rod. "Dad, I think I caught something." "Well done. Reel it in slowly." We slowly reeled in the fishing line. We managed to catch a small sardine. Both he and I were overjoyed. "Thanks to you, Dad, we caught a fish." When I said that, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No, James, you caught this fish." I was moved and continued fishing. We caught several more fishes and enjoyed a wonderful time together. That night, he cooked a lavish meal using the fish we had caught. We had the dinner together in a long time. I felt like I was in a dream. While we were eating, he said to me, "Fishing is a lot like life." "Huh?" I was puzzled by his sudden words. I couldn't understand how fishing was like life. He continued, "Fishing isn't just about holding a rod. You need to try different techniques to catch fish. Life is the same. You can't just wait around. You have to go out and seize opportunities. Otherwise, life won't change." His words were powerful. So that's what it meant. For the first time, I realized that I had been going about things the wrong way. "Do you think it's not too late for me?" When I asked, he smiled softly. "You're still in middle school. Your life is just beginning. You can build the life you dream of from here on out." Hearing his words, I decided to give my all and not give up on my life. Seeing my determination, he looked pleased. From the next day, I started going back to middle school. Some kids teased me for being back, but I decided to ignore them. I didn't need mean people in my life. I was determined to walk the path of the life I wanted, just as my father said. Although it was tough, I gradually improved my grades. When I felt lonely because my father came home late, I started visiting his factory. He began teaching me about his work and showing me what he did. Those times became precious to me. Just a few months ago, I had given up on everything, but I've changed gradually and he seemed happy to see my change. I took it for granted that this happy life with my father would continue. But then, a storm-like event occurred. It happened in the summer of my third year of middle school. Just a few days before summer break ended. When we were having lunch together, Dad suddenly clutched his chest and started to suffer. "Dad, what's wrong?" I asked, and he weakly replied, "It's okay. Don't worry." But he looked in severe pain. I quickly called an ambulance. Meanwhile, his complexion was worsening. What if something happens to Dad? That thought dominated my mind. Finally, the ambulance arrived, and he was rushed to a large hospital. What if he has a serious illness? When that thought began to cross my mind, I was called in by the doctor and was stunned. With a look of difficulty, the doctor told me his diagnosis. I was worried because Tom hadn't come to the hospital recently. Tom has progressive cancer. I couldn't believe what the doctor was saying. He didn't tell me anything about this. There must be some mistake. When I said that, the doctor shook his head. He is already in the terminal stage. He probably couldn't bring himself to tell you, James. I collapsed to my knees. The doctor explained many things, but I couldn't hear any of it. I headed to the hospital room where my father was lying. I looked at his face. He seemed to have woken up and was looking at me anxiously. "So you heard my diagnosis?" "I don't have much time left." Holding his hand, I said, "Dad, what am I supposed to do without you?" I was emotional. He stroked my head and said, "I'm still here, and I want to see you graduate middle school. So don't worry too much." His words were weak, but I desperately wanted him to live longer. After that, he was discharged from the hospital. We returned to our usual routine. I started to cherish the time with him, staying by his side whenever I wasn't at school. One day, as my middle school graduation approached, I made a big decision. I decided not to go to high school and instead take over his factory. "We have enough money for you to go to high school," he said, but my mind was made up. His factory dealt with precision machinery, requiring specialized knowledge. I wanted to learn everything from him while he was still alive. Eventually, he agreed with my plan and started teaching me the ropes at the factory every day. He told me he was independently developing medical devices in his spare time. "Why are you developing medical devices? It's expensive and not very profitable, right?" When I asked, he looked serious and said, "If this device succeeds, it will save many lives. If it had been completed a bit earlier, it might have saved your mother." I was speechless. He was developing this medical device for my late mother. He was determined to complete it, but the development was incredibly challenging. And it seemed it would take decades if only done in his spare time. Since he started teaching me, his health had been stable, and I hoped he would continue to live. But the inevitable day was drawing closer. After teaching me everything, he collapsed again in the factory. His face was pale, and he was barely breathing. I quickly called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor's expression was grim. I realized that his time was short. I stayed by his side, never leaving him. That night, my father opened his eyes slightly and spoke to me. His voice was faint. "James, I'm sorry I couldn't always be there for you. But you'll be okay on your own now. Stay strong." With those words, he passed away. I was overwhelmed with sadness and couldn't stop crying. At that moment, the factory's only employee, George, rushed to the hospital. George had been working with my father since the factory was founded and was like family to us. He hugged me without saying a word and said, "Come live with me." After that, I don't remember much. The shock was too great, and those memories were wiped from my mind. George handled all the funeral arrangements, and my father was peacefully sent off to heaven. For a while, I couldn't do anything due to the overwhelming loneliness of my father's absence. During this time, George said to me, "This factory that Tom left you, James, you have to protect it." His words brought me back to reality. My father had taught me everything about the factory before he passed away. He must have wanted me to keep the factory running. I resolved to dedicate myself to the factory. But running the factory wasn't easy. When the clients heard about my father's death, they began withdrawing their business. Faced with reality, I was at a loss. At this rate, I wouldn't even be able to pay George, who was also taking care of me. Despite the situation, George didn't leave the factory. Keep working hard, and the clients will return. This is a time for patience. George said this and continued working tirelessly. For George and my late father, I decided to work even harder. With this resolve, I started looking for new clients. One day, I unexpectedly ran into someone. As usual, I was walking around town, promoting the precision machinery from our factory. Suddenly, I heard a voice from behind. "Hey! Isn't that James?" I turned around fearfully and saw Mark, wearing a prestigious high school uniform. I was shocked and couldn't stop trembling. "Hi. Long time no see," I managed to say, but he looked me up and down, laughing mockingly. Running into him in such a place, I really had no luck. He was the person who had relentlessly bullied me during middle school. I'll never forget that winter in the first year of middle school. He made fun of the hand-me-down coat I was wearing from a neighbor. "That's so lame. Whose hand-me-down is that ugly coat?" Filled with anger at being mocked, I couldn't help but retort. "Shut up. It's none of your business." I regretted it immediately, but controlling my emotions was very difficult. Then, witnessing this, Sarah stood up for me. "Mark, stop being so mean." Sarah, the class Madonna, said this with an angry expression. Shocked by her words, he said nothing more at that moment, but his behavior worsened afterwards. Without Sarah around, he became even crueler to me, making school unbearable. I stopped attending school for a while because of him. Graduating middle school, I thought I was finally free from Mark, but seeing him again felt like a nightmare. He looked down on me just like he used to. "I heard you're working now, because you don't go to high school." Poor guy. Your father didn't leave you anything, huh? Although I was enraged, I knew the best thing to do was to ignore him, so I started to walk away. But he followed me, saying something unexpected. "What? You're ignoring me? Someone like you has no right to ignore me. Who does he think he is? Why do I have to endure this?" My pent-up anger took over. But I refused to give in. I knew that responding would only make things worse, so I kept walking. Gradually, he disappeared from my view. After that, I never saw him again. Time passed quickly, and 20 years went by. I was now 36 years old. Thanks to my sales efforts back then, our factory had transformed into a large operation with many clients. We now have over 200 employees and run a new factory. All of this was possible because of the skills my father left me and George's support. Without the two of them, we wouldn't have grown this much. "Mr. Johnson, it's time for the meeting. We need to get ready quickly, or we'll be late." George was still active and always supported my laid-back approach. "Please don't call me Mr. Johnson. It's embarrassing. We don't have time for that. Hurry up." With his urging, I began preparing to meet our client. "This deal involves millions of dollars. Do your best." George saw me off as I left the factory. I was headed to M Industries. M Industries is the leading company in the precision machinery parts industry. We plan to use their parts to manufacture a new machine soon. I entered the headquarters of M Industries. As I approached the reception, I saw a familiar face. I gasped. It was Mark. Why do I keep running into him in such places? I cursed my bad luck. Looking down, I hoped he wouldn't notice me, but unfortunately, Mark approached me. "What are you doing at my company?" "What? My company?" I never expected him to be working here. Had I walked into the enemy's territory? As I pondered this, he looked down on me again. "This isn't a place for a middle school graduate like you. I'm here for a business meeting." When I said that, he laughed. "I bet it's just a small deal. We're not selling our parts to someone like you." My father is a manager here, and I'll make sure he knows. I was speechless. Mark knew nothing about my company. It couldn't be helped. With that thought, I ignored him and went to the reception. Watching this, he kept laughing at me. The receptionist showed me to the meeting room where I waited for the representative, John. Within a few minutes, John entered the room. I explained the products we needed for our factory, and the meeting went smoothly. It's an honor for our parts to be used in your factory, James. We look forward to working with you. John smiled. Thank you for accommodating our requests. After that, John and I chatted about various things. As I was getting ready to leave, the meeting room door burst open. It was the company's manager, Mike. John was wide-eyed, wondering what was going on. Then, Mike abruptly spoke to me. Are you James? You went to the same middle school as my son, Mark, didn't you? Behind Mike, I noticed Mark with a smug smile. Mike was Mark's father. Yes, that's right. When I replied, Mike said something unbelievable. It seems you ignored Mark, huh? You must be pretty important to be ignoring people. Which prestigious college did you graduate from? Seeing him smile, it was clear that Mike had already heard everything from Mark and knew all about me. He was intentionally asking to provoke me. I didn't go to college. I'm a middle school graduate. Upon hearing my words, Mike and Mark started laughing. What? You're a middle school graduate? We won't deal with someone so incompetent. The contract is off. Hearing this, John started to panic. Cancel the contract? It was an unexpected turn of events. I was stunned and couldn't comprehend what was being said. What are you saying? John shouted at Mike, and Mark raised his voice angrily. We don't need to do business with someone like you. Our company will be fine without it. Mike added fuel to the fire with more degrading words. A middle school graduate like you must be an idiot. We can't contract with a company that employs someone like you. Mike's voice echoed down the hallway, and the female employees at the reception were looking on curiously. A middle school graduate is incompetent. That's when I realized the situation I was in. Given how far this had gone, there was no turning back. I took a deep breath. John, noticing my demeanor, continued to be agitated. Mike is wrong. James, please don't take it to heart. Hearing him, Mike and Mark laughed even harder. John, why are you so hung up on doing business with a company that has a dropout? The deal can't be that significant. I made up my mind. Then, I guess this $300 million contract is cancelled. What? $300 million? There's no way. John, flustered, desperately began explaining to the two of them. We had a $300 million deal with Johnson Precision Machinery. And what's more, President Smith personally handled this deal. How will you take responsibility for this? What? Mr. Smith handled it personally. That's impossible. I can't believe this nonsense. At that moment, a man appeared behind Mike. And he shouted at Mike in a voice that seemed almost otherworldly. Everything John said is true. I personally requested the deal with Mr. Johnson. Are you saying a $300 million deal is insignificant? Mr. Smith. Mike nearly collapsed in shock. Mark took a step back. I came to check on the commotion and found this. How dare you treat my client this way? Mr. Smith's face was as red as a demon's. Then he looked at me. Mr. Johnson, I am deeply sorry. I can't find the words to apologize enough. Mr. Smith apologized sincerely to me. Mike, visibly shaken, started stammering excuses. Mr. Johnson is a friend of my son, Mark. That's why I said those things. Since they're friends, it shouldn't be a problem. If I had known he was your client, I would never have acted that way. When did Mark and I become friends? I was disgusted by the blatant lies coming from Mike. Mr. Smith watched this exchange with a puzzled look. Mr. Smith. My father is right. James and I are good friends. If I talk to him, he'll reinstate the contract. Mr. Smith listened, trembling with anger. Enough of your convenient lies. Mr. Johnson, is any of this true? I quietly shook my head. There was no truth in their words. Mark bullied me in middle school, calling me poor. There's no way we could be friends. Mr. Smith glared at the two of them. Mark rushed over to me, looking desperate. What are you talking about? We're friends, right? Let's restore the contract. I sighed in disbelief. Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, but I can't do business with a company that employs people with such low character. Mike and Mark turned pale. Mr. Smith stood there, stunned. But then Mike said something shocking. Mr. Smith, I will find another client to replace Johnson Precision Machinery. Let's just give up on this one. No matter what we say. It's clear we can't restore the contract. Mr. Smith's face went from disbelief to a furious rage. You too. How dare you say such things? Stop this nonsense, ahem. Mr. Smith started coughing from his anger. I approached him, patting his back. Mr. Smith, please calm down. This isn't good for your heart. Ahem. Mike and Mark watched in shock as Mr. Smith coughed. John began to explain to them. Mr. Smith recently had a pacemaker implanted. Please don't get him too excited. The two of them looked surprised, clearly unaware of this. Once Mr. Smith's coughing subsided, he began to reveal the truth they didn't know. Mr. Johnson is not someone you can look down on. He has saved many lives. Saved lives. Silence filled the meeting room. Then John handed Mike some documents from my factory. Mike was speechless as he looked through them. A pacemaker? Mr. Johnson manufactures state-of-the-art pacemakers. He approached us to supply parts for his latest model. Mike and Mark were at a loss for words. Yes, my factory now focuses on developing and manufacturing medical devices. This was the device my father had been developing before he passed away. Driven by the hope that an advanced pacemaker could have saved my mother, my father worked on it until his last moments. I continued his work, carrying on his legacy. If the development of this pacemaker succeeds, it will bring significant revenue to my factory. More importantly, it will become a beacon of hope for many people suffering from heart disease. I continued his work. Working tirelessly with George, I finally completed the pacemaker. I was overjoyed when it was finished. We had it tested thoroughly to ensure there were no issues, and then I began promoting it to hospitals. At first, few hospitals were willing to adopt a pacemaker from an unknown factory, but gradually, it gained acceptance and is now used in many hospitals. We receive thank you letters daily from people around the world who have had our pacemakers implanted. One day, while these developments were ongoing, Mr. Smith of M Industries visited my factory. I recognized his face from business magazines. I wondered why the president of such a large company would visit my factory. Then he spoke words that shocked me. Mr. Johnson, your pacemaker saved my life. Your technology is incredible. Please, let our company produce the parts Johnson Precision Machinery needs. It was unbelievable that the president of the top company in the machinery parts industry would personally pitch to me. But as I listened, I realized Mr. Smith wasn't seeking profit. He wanted to help people like himself who suffer from heart disease. If I were to manufacture pacemakers, I wanted to work with someone who shared my values. So, I accepted Mr. Smith's proposal. Today was the day of that meeting. This is when Mike and Mark, unaware of the situation, appeared. Mr. Smith let out a big sigh. Mr. Johnson has endured many hardships. He understands people's pain more than you do. And you, all you can do is look down on others. We're terribly sorry. Mike apologized and nudged Mark to apologize as well. But then, Mr. Smith said something no one expected. Mr. Johnson, if Mike and his son Mark leave the company, will you reinstate the contract? What? That's too harsh. James, you wouldn't do that, would you? I thought deeply. Mr. Smith was a principled and truly admirable person. We shared the goal of helping people with heart disease. I took a deep breath. Yes, please do. These two are only a source of trouble. They will continue to cause problems if we don't deal with them now." As I said this, Mark exploded with anger. "Don't you have any compassion? You just got lucky with a hit product. Don't drag us into this." The room fell silent, and Mike began to yell at Mark. "What are you saying? We're on the verge of being fired." With that, Mike suddenly dropped to his knees and began to beg. "Mark can be fired, but please let me stay. I'll work harder than ever and make amends to Mr. Johnson." Mark reacted immediately. "Dad, that's terrible. You're young. You can find another job. I'm too old for that. That's unfair. This is all because of what you said. Shut up. Just do as I say." The embarrassing argument between father and son began. Mr. Smith and John looked on in disbelief. "The pacemakers we make at my factory save many lives. I don't want people like this making our parts." "I understand." Mr. Smith stood in front of them. He glared at them and raised his voice. "You two are reassigned. You will have nothing to do with the products supplied to Mr. Johnson's factory." As Mr. Smith spoke, the two looked at each other, trembling. Then they collapsed to their knees. The two of them remained speechless and despondent. After that, both of them were reassigned to a regional factory. Mike was demoted to a regular employee, but it seems he has turned over a new leaf and is now working hard. Mark decided to quit. He believed he could easily find a job at a better company than M Industries, but reality was not so kind. Unable to find a permanent job, Mark is now working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. This is likely the consequence of looking down on others for so long. I hope this experience serves as a good lesson for him. Meanwhile, my factory secured a $300 million contract with M Industries. This allowed us to release our state-of-the-art pacemaker, saving even more lives. On a personal note, I married my middle school classmate, Sarah, whom I had been secretly dating. George was as happy as if it were his own wedding. Life has its ups and downs, but I want to continue becoming someone my Father in heaven would be proud of. If you were the boss, we'd all quit. Standing in front of me with his resignation letter in hand, Alex, who graduated at the top of his class from Harvard, was backed by 20 other Harvard graduates. Since he joined the company, Alex had always wanted to be in the sales department, but he was placed in my accounting department, where I was the manager. This seemed to be a significant dissatisfaction for him. Alex seemed to think that they were indispensable to our company. "Thank you. This helps a lot." "What do you mean?" "I will properly process your resignation letters. I'll also hand over the letters from other departments to their respective managers. So don't worry. It was a short time, but thanks for your service." Alex's face went blank with shock. The new employees standing behind him started whispering to each other in a state of panic. This was the result of their arrogance, clinging to the Harvard brand. "My name is John. I am a 52-year-old manager of the accounting department at a major trading company. I graduated from a regional state university and joined this company. Time flies, and it's already been 30 years since then. For years after joining the company, I got married, and 2 years later, my son was born. Now, my son is independent, and my wife and I live a peaceful life. My wife grew up in a wealthy family and has a relaxed nature, which made me feel at ease just being with her. There were many struggles at work, but every April was especially nerve-wracking. This was because new employees joined the company. I didn't want to blame it on age, but I increasingly feel a gap in mindset with the younger generation. Many highly educated new recruits join us each year, probably because they can boast about being part of our company at their reunions. However, this educational background is often misleading, as a high education level does not always equate to being competent. Even among the elite new hires, many can barely use a computer, causing constant headaches for us, their senior colleagues and superiors. Many of my peers are now department managers, and when we go out for drinks, it often turns into a complaint session about our subordinates. The new hire just came in, and he says, "I'm not good at answering the phone," so he doesn't pick up even when it rings. Can you believe that? I hear that many young people are not good at handling calls nowadays because they are used to communicating via messaging apps. In the past, answering the phone was considered a rookie's job. Now, even lightly suggesting "can't you even do that" can lead to various issues. It's become a difficult world to navigate. These gripe sessions usually end around the second round of drinks. We used to stay out drinking much later, but we couldn't handle it anymore. As we age, we lose the stamina we had when we were young, and drinking a lot of alcohol quickly makes us feel unwell. Aging is a sad thing. Moreover, older people often seem to be treated worse than the young, which is baffling. Just for being young, some people act as if they deserve a reward, which I find quite annoying. Even in professional chess and other sports, the youngest players are excessively celebrated. I wonder if this is a sign of the times or if it has always been this way. Women also strive to look younger and are praised for being ageless beauties. There must be some value in getting older, but in this country, old age is often seen as a negative. The reason I felt so frustrated was that there was a real problem rookie in my accounting department, which I manage. This problem rookie joined the company 3 years ago and was assigned to the accounting department. His name was Alex. He was a top graduate of Harvard's economics department, a super elite. Alex, with his impressive credentials, was something of a hero when he joined. Our company had hired Harvard graduates before, but getting someone who graduated at the top of their class was a triumph for our HR department. I had been promoted to the manager of the accounting department the previous year, and most of the staff were young. Not everyone, but most of the employees were enthusiastic and actively engaged in their work. Being young, they also had stamina, and even with long hours, they worked hard without showing fatigue. I watched my subordinates with a sense of pride. Back then, I had no aversion to young people and, like everyone else, had high expectations for young Alex. However, these expectations were greatly betrayed. I acknowledged that Alex was very intelligent. He was quick with calculations and could finish preparing documents in no time. When I praised him, Alex would smile happily. "I've been good at mental arithmetic since kindergarten. Spending too much time on such calculations is a failure as a professional." On the surface, this might sound like a testament to Alex's competence. However, this task was not initially given to Alex. An older employee was supposed to handle it but was reassigned, so Alex took over. I thought he would continue working hard, but soon, cracks began to show in his behavior. He would browse his phone during work hours or disappear to chat with colleagues in other departments, only to return much later. When I reprimanded him, he sulked. "Anyone could do this kind of work. Don't assign me tasks that someone else can do. Then tell me, what work can only you do? At least the work in the accounting department isn't my kind of job. Sitting at a desk doing mundane tasks isn't for me. That's why I didn't want to be in the accounting department." Disregarding his unprofessional behavior, he began complaining about not being assigned to his desired department. Alex had repeatedly requested to be transferred to the sales department, causing me much trouble. There's a saying, "perseverance prevails," which Alex had heard countless times from higher-ups. Each time, he would pout and say, "Fine," but he never showed any determination to excel in the accounting department. Always with a dissatisfied expression, he would only do the bare minimum, making it impossible for me to rate him highly as his manager. To be honest, I would love to wrap up this useless Alex and sending him to the sales department as a gift. When I go drinking with my peers, they mock me, saying I'm always stuck doing petty calculations. I don't even get to go out. And my pale skin is embarrassing. With Alex constantly complaining, I discreetly approached Luke, the head of the sales department, to see if there was a possibility of transferring Alex, but even the sales department deemed him unnecessary. There was another reason Alex was fixated on the sales department. Michelle, who joined the company at the same time, was thriving in the sales department. Michelle, also a Harvard economics graduate, was Alex's rival for the top spot during their student years. Although Alex graduated at the top and took the title of Harvard's valedictorian, Michelle quickly demonstrated her true abilities in the professional world. The sales department is the face of the company, so making a good impression on clients is crucial. In this regard, Michelle, with her charming face, was adored by the older generation of clients. Some clients even rescheduled just to meet with Michelle. Not only did she have good looks, but she also had a wonderful personality. She treated everyone with sincerity, and everyone enjoyed talking to her. As a result, she easily secured significant contracts. Among my peers, Luke, who had Michelle as a subordinate, was the envy of us all. Other departments also had Harvard graduates, but their brand image was the only thing notable about them, with little real achievement. Michelle is the only real talent among the Harvard graduates in our company. To be honest, I can't believe Alex was the valedictorian. Michelle being the valedictorian would make more sense. Watching my peers mock Alex and praise Michelle, I could only give a wry smile. If Michelle was the top talent, Alex was undoubtedly the worst. Having Alex as a subordinate brought me endless trouble. That night, I skipped the second round of drinks and headed to my favorite bar alone. It's a high-end, relaxed magic bar. I enjoyed watching the magician's show while sipping my drink, feeling a sense of elegance. Seeing the back of a woman with a short haircut who was already enjoying herself, my expression naturally softened. The woman turned around and waved at me when she noticed me. It was none other than Michelle, the topic of our earlier conversation. "John, you're taking your sweet time. I've been enjoying myself here." In fact, Michelle and I often ran into each other at the magic bar. There's nothing sketchy about our relationship, we both simply love magic and happened to frequent the same bar. Michelle had dreamed of becoming a magician when she was young, but her parents strongly opposed it, so she ended up as a fan. We talked about many things at the magic bar and deepened our friendship. In the depths of my heart, I thought it wouldn't hurt to entertain a flicker of sweet thoughts. One day, suddenly, Alex, accompanied by 20 young employees, walked towards my desk. Looking closely, I realized that all of them were Harvard graduates. "What's all this commotion about?" "John, when are you going to transfer me to the sales department?" "That again?" "I have no intention of transferring you to the sales department. Get back to your desk." Alex looked down at me arrogantly and threw his resignation letter onto my desk. "If you're the boss, we all quit." He was trying to manipulate the situation by bringing in younger Harvard graduates and making them all submit their resignation letters to get his way. One by one, they tossed their resignation letters onto my desk. Alex seemed to believe that they were indispensable to our company. Indeed, many Harvard graduates held important positions in the company, and if 20 of them quit simultaneously, it would cripple the company. At this moment, the company's fate rested solely on my decision. I couldn't risk plunging the company into a crisis due to my judgment. However, I was confident in my plan. I couldn't believe Alex had the leadership skills to rally 20 Harvard graduates behind him. In other words, not all 20 were united in supporting Alex. In a workplace, everyone has their own grievances and frustrations. Especially among the Harvard graduates, many had a sense of pride that they were the elite of the country, leading them to expect excessively favorable treatment. But reality wasn't so kind, and their grand expectations were continually being adjusted downwards. So, what if Alex had approached them during their moments of dissatisfaction and anxiety? Perhaps it went something like this. "I want to give John a good scare. Wouldn't you love to see that arrogant boss groveling before us? I'd like to see that, but are you sure they won't accept our resignation letters? Don't worry. We have credentials recognized worldwide, not just in the US. We have nothing to fear." This might have convinced 20 Harvard graduates to join Alex. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel sorry for those who were dragged along into this. I glared at Alex from my seat without saying a word. After a moment of staring each other down, I suddenly broke into a broad smile. "Thank you. This helps a lot." "What? What do you mean?" "I will properly process your resignation letters. I'll make sure the other department heads receive theirs too." It was a short time. But thanks for your service. Alex stood there, stunned and unable to comprehend the situation. I felt like bursting out laughing inside, but I held it in and maintained a gentle smile. After all, as their boss, I had granted their wish. I picked up Alex's resignation letter and put it in my suit pocket. The new employees behind him started whispering in a state of panic. "Hey, he's really accepting them. Does this mean Alex is going to quit? If Alex quits, does that mean I have to quit too?" No one could answer these questions. Everyone was likely thinking, this isn't what we agreed to. They never intended to actually submit their resignation letters. They probably thought they could scare the company into bending to their demands with the threat of 20 Harvard graduates quitting at once. However, their bluff backfired, and now their resignation letters were being accepted, leaving them potentially jobless. This was the result of their arrogance, clinging to the Harvard brand. One of them turned on Alex, voicing his complaint. "This isn't what we agreed to. You said they wouldn't accept the resignations. I never intended to quit. John, please give me back my resignation letter. I don't want to quit either." The Harvard graduates began betraying Alex one after another. Alex, looking very flustered, tried to keep up his bravado. "This is just John's bluff. We'd be in trouble if we actually quit. Are you guys misunderstanding something? Just because you're Harvard graduates doesn't mean you can do the job well. You've all shown us that. From now on, HR will reconsider blindly hiring Harvard grads." All the Harvard graduates turned pale and stared at me. My calm words probably made them even more fearful. "Anyone who wants their resignation letter back, line up. I'll return them one by one." All the Harvard graduates quickly lined up in a single file. It was the moment Alex completely lost. Thus, the Harvard graduates backed down, leaving Alex alone. The other employees in the accounting department ignored Alex and continued working as if he didn't exist. Occasionally, some female employees would glance over nervously. Amidst this, Alex stomped his feet in frustration. As I suspected, Alex had almost no respect from his peers. I started to feel a bit sorry for him, but if I showed pity now, Alex would stop reflecting on his actions immediately. So, I decided to take a second shot. "Alex, it seems you have a significant issue to deal with." "What do you mean?" "I don't have any issues." "Then, what about your relationship with Mary?" "Ah!" Alex exclaimed. Mary had married Kevin, the current sales department manager, 2 years ago. In other words, Alex was having an affair with a married woman. Naturally, Kevin had no idea about this. Alex had probably approached Mary not out of genuine affection but because she was married to the sales manager. He likely wanted to gather information about the sales department and get Mary to put in a good word for him with Luke for a transfer. I can't keep this a secret from Kevin forever. If it comes out, not only will you not get a transfer, but you might also be fired or sent to a regional office. That would be terrible. Please do something. Michelle had informed me about Alex's indiscretions, which dated back to his college days. Over drinks at the Magic Bar, Michelle had shared stories about Alex's character and past behavior. In college, he only targeted girls from wealthy families. I was on a scholarship, so he ignored me. But my friends were deceived by his seemingly kind appearance and suffered because of it. Is that so? Is he seeing anyone now? He's secretly seeing Mary from your accounting department. He knows she's married, so it's definitely an affair. Mary's husband, Kevin, the sales department manager, is 10 years younger than me and a very serious man. His only flaw is that he's too serious and hasn't had much luck with women. However, 2 years ago, at the age of 40, he married my subordinate Mary, and I thought they had built a happy home. But it seems Alex approached Mary purely out of ambition, intending to use her. This infuriated me, and I trembled with anger. Around the same time, Mary confided in me, admitting she had been seeing Alex. She said she didn't feel bad initially, being pursued by a young, promising elite like Alex. The thrill of keeping it a secret at work only fueled her feelings. But gradually, she began to suspect that she was just being used. Her doubts started when Alex, every time they met, seemed overly interested in her husband Kevin's activities and the internal issues of the sales department. I regret what I've done. I want to break up with Alex without my husband finding out. I understand. I'll make sure Kevin doesn't find out. Let's arrange a time for the three of us to talk. One afternoon, sensing the time was right, I called Mary to my desk, and the three of us went to the meeting room in the back. First, I asked Alex if he genuinely loved Mary. Alex leaned back in his chair and started laughing. Seriously? I'm not in love with an older woman like her. But she takes me to expensive places and pays for everything. She's like a convenient ATM. Clearly, Alex never loved Mary. As the conversation continued, it was revealed that Alex had also borrowed money from Mary. If Kevin finds out about your relationship, you won't get away unscathed. End the relationship immediately and repay the money you borrowed from her. On the condition that I wouldn't tell Kevin anything, I made Alex promise to repay Mary in full that very day. I was such a fool. Mary cried, covering her face. Meanwhile, Alex remained sullen, showing no signs of remorse. For someone like Alex, who had lived his life as an elite from a young age, this was the biggest crisis of his life. If he had declared at that moment that he would change his ways and work seriously, things might have turned out differently. However, Alex remained defiant until the end. Are you really going to accept only my resignation? Rejecting everyone else's but accepting mine is just harassment. You've always hated me and now you're taking your revenge. Despite being the one who caused this situation, he was shifting the blame and even threatened to take the matter to President Anderson. He won't let this slide. I'm a Harvard valedictorian, a valuable asset. He won't want to lose me. I began to feel a strange sense of pity for Alex. How delusional must he be to think he is so special? Finally, I decided to reveal a significant secret. I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. My wife is Mr. Anderson's daughter, and I'm the next in line to become president. So, whatever you say to my father-in-law will likely fall on deaf ears. What? You're the next president? No one ever told me that. Those who needed to know did. You were too consumed with your own ambition to be told. It would have caused too many problems if you knew. Mary, listening to the conversation, brightened up. Not revealing John's identity to Alex became a kind of amusement among the employees. Everyone secretly laughed, thinking he has no idea. Serves you right. What? You all conspired against me? Why? I'm not the only one who wants to get ahead. If you had faced each task earnestly, your future might have been different. But you were insincere because you felt you didn't belong in this department. This is your consequence. Mary was right. Unable to find words to counter Mary, Alex looked down for a moment but then desperately pleaded with me. John, I'll change my ways and work hard. Please return my resignation letter. It was just a joke. As a leader, you should understand and accept such jokes. Alex, take responsibility for your actions. I didn't force you to submit your resignation letter. Moreover, you almost caused other employees to resign too. Therefore, I will process your resignation. And so, Alex ended up resigning. The resignation fiasco caused by Alex became a hot topic within the company. Everyone accepted his departure as inevitable. Having been with the company for only 3 years, he didn't receive any severance pay. Alex packed up his desk, under the cold stares of his colleagues. You'll regret staying in this company. I'll make sure of it. With that parting shot, Alex left. Alex's resignation also impacted the other Harvard graduates working in different departments. He wasn't the only one who had submitted a resignation letter. Trying to resolve their grievances by threatening the company was unacceptable. If this behavior was tolerated, similar incidents could happen again. The Harvard graduates involved in the fiasco were summoned individually by President Anderson and were asked to reaffirm their commitment. They desperately explained their actions, not wanting to be fired over this. Afterward, the young Harvard graduates became less outspoken, making it easier for those of us in leadership positions. They were elites, so they would likely become leaders in the future. Hopefully, this incident made them reflect deeply. Mary, who had been having an affair with Alex, confessed everything to her husband Kevin, ready to face divorce. They had numerous discussions and ultimately decided to rebuild their marriage rather than divorce. Lately, they have been rediscovering the good in each other, and Mary happily described it as a second honeymoon. Perhaps this is what they mean by "a storm strengthens the roots." Shortly after this commotion, I experienced a shocking event. Michelle announced she was quitting the company. At our favorite magic bar, Michelle told me quietly over drinks. I enjoy my current job, but I don't want to give up on my dream. I've decided to become a magician. Michelle explained that her Harvard salutatorian title felt like a chain. She had always been made to believe that, given her excellent education, she must use her intellect to contribute to society. Her parents, of course, expected her to follow a conventional career path. Then, Alex's resignation debacle shook Michelle's resolve. Michelle gave a small laugh and joked. I felt like writing my own resignation letter too. I couldn't deny Michelle's decision. Now that it had come to this, I decided to support her quietly. After resigning, Alex quickly tried to find another job but found himself blacklisted by related companies, receiving no offers. Still brandishing his Harvard valedictorian title, he reached out to various startups and managed to join one. Alex tried in his own way to make me regret pushing him to resign. However, he caused similar problems wherever he went. Frustrated by what he perceived as unfair treatment, Alex stopped working for others and borrowed money to start his own business. However, his business never took off, and he found himself unable to repay the debts. Despite his parents' help, his newly founded company soon went under, and he descended into a degenerate lifestyle. He was often seen gambling on horse races and sports, and walking around the neighborhood smelling of alcohol even during the day. 7 years have passed since then. Now, as the president of the company, I came to Las Vegas with my wife, partly for business. That night, Michelle was performing as a magician on stage. I felt both excitement and anxiety, my chest tight with anticipation before the show started. Michelle appeared on stage in a dazzling costume. She exuded confidence, and the audience was continually amazed, their cheers and applause never stopping. Since becoming president, I have always made it a point to listen to others' opinions. My brother-in-law, James, who is the executive vice president, actively manages the company while I often stay in the background, supporting him. I even checked with James to see if he would prefer being president while I took the vice president role. But James preferred the current arrangement. This setup allows us to work in the most effective way. There are various ways to live one's life. Some live brightly in the spotlight, while others thrive behind the scenes. A glamorous life comes with significant hardships, and a life behind the scenes requires a careful consideration of human connections. To others, Michelle's life may appear glamorous, while mine seems modest. Regardless of the path, I want to ensure that I can look back and feel that my life was worth living. I'm only 60, and my life continues. I will keep valuing human connections and live my life earnestly.